Hello everyone and welcome to Stan the Wine Man TV. I am your host, Stan Rattan, and this is a Blue Collar Wine Show where I help you spend your wine dollars wisely. I'm very, very honored to have Ashley Trout. Ashley, thanks for coming on board.
Thanks for having me.
We have a tasting event coming up,
Yeah.
so we're doing this before that, which is really exciting. Ashley is probably one of the top women winemakers in Washington State, perhaps the West Coast.
Oh goodness. Oh goodness. I don't know how to respond to that. That's probably not true.
You know, I always hate to. I mean, I know there's a lot of really famous women winemakers. You have Helen Turley, Heidi Barrett, Susanna Balbo. Have you ever met her?
Mm-hmm. No, but I had a bunch of friends work for her when I was working down in Argentina. Yeah.
Yeah. So she had a company called Flying Trout, right? Mm-hmm. And that was a play on your flying down to Argentina to make wine and coming back to make wine for your Flying Trout label.
Yeah, so Trout's my last name, and I was flying between Argentina and Walla Walla, so it was a very literal naming for a brand.
Yeah, very clever.
Well.
By the way. So then you had that brand, then you sold it to?
Yep. I sold it to Taro Estates, the guys that owned Taro Estates and Waters Winery in 2010, and then stayed on as the winemaker until 2015, 5 more years.
Now, is Waters defunct now? Did he go out of business?
I think so.
Yeah, he was a great guy.
Yeah.
What was his name again?
Jamie.
Jamie, I love Jamie.
Brown.
Yeah, great guy to hang around with.
Yeah.
So you had this Flying Trout wine. What was your focus there as far as varietals?
Malbec and Malbec blends. Everything we did had Malbec in it, except for the white wine, the Torrontés that I was doing down in Argentina.
Okay.
Everything else was Malbec.
Okay. So did you do any winemaking in Washington? With the Flying Trout?
That's
and
why
that was all Malbec?
Yeah. I was doing old Malbec in Argentina and then young Malbec up in Washington. It had been planted recently. So having that juxtaposition was pretty fun.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah.
That'd be really cool. And then you started Brook and Bull. Obviously you couldn't put your name in there.
Right.
Because you sold your label.
Right.
But you chose a really clever label.
I tried.
Yeah. I think this is cool. So Brook and Bull, explain that.
Yeah, well, so there are not a lot of women winemakers. There are not a lot of women winery owners, even fewer winery owners who are female. And so I think it's important as one of those individuals to make sure that women get in the habit and feel empowered and normalized to put their name on there, right? Put their stamp on there.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to get my name on there. So my last name's Trout. Brook Trout and Bull Trout are 2 kinds of trout. So kind of a fun little play on that.
Yeah, and I wonder how many people know that.
It's not obvious from the get-go, but people get it pretty quickly.
Well, a lot of people understand it now.
Yes.
That interview I watched of you, that's where you mentioned it, and I thought, wow, that's really clever. I never really thought about why it was called Brook and Bull.
Yeah.
But that makes complete sense. So, very cool. When did you feel like you got the respect you wanted as a winemaker, woman or not, you know? When did you feel like, hey, I've made it and people, you know, respect me and they like my wines? When did that happen?
I mean, I would almost say in reverse order. I've always felt respected. I've been very, I would say honored and blessed, but the caveat to that is we should all be respected always. That should not be a blessing. But I'll finish my first sentence, which was I feel very honored and blessed to have had. I worked for Chuck Reininger when I first started at Reininger Winery for 8 years. And talk about being respected, right? Like what a good guy, what just an archangel to have coming into the wine industry.
Absolutely.
So, I hear about some women who've had sort of struggles in the industry and not been treated the right way. And I was naive and totally shocked that this was happening to others because it was not my journey. I was always very respected. And then in the same vein, there are a lot of Washington farmers, Washington vineyard managers and owners who had daughters and they wanted to see that world changed for their daughters.
Sure.
And so I got access to fruit that honestly I did not deserve. early in my career, and so I felt very respected on that front. And then there are a lot of wine writers, not necessarily wine critics, that's not such a scoring thing, but there are a lot of wine writers for publications nationwide that are women, and they've been clamoring to see more women in the industry, and so I've felt very respected in my conversations with those ladies. So I've never not felt respected.
These Flying Trout wines, and I like the Brook Bull wines. When did that kind of, because, I mean, every winery hopes that, that their wine grabs on,
Yeah. I would say just sort of with the emergence of Brook Bull at all. So when I started Flying Trout, I was 24 and didn't really know what I was doing and didn't have a name for myself, and I was learning a lot. Flying Trout was sort of my MBA in a way, and so when I started Brook Bull, I was able to do that with all those lessons learned, and we sort of came out of the gates with Brook Bull with oomph, right? With some professionalism behind it, and with some knowledge and with some efficacy, right? And so I would say with the launch of Brook Bull, early, from the get-go, it sort of felt like, okay, we know what's up. We've got people who've followed from Brook Bull who are buying the wines. We've got wine writers who know who I am. We've got, it's rolling.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
It's a good concept, and we think we're pouring one tonight.
Good.
I really like the Gruner, but obviously you can't always get Gruner.
We do have a little variation from donation season to donation season.
Yeah.
Right. We do have another Gruner that's coming out that I'm super excited about for Vital. We've been rolling out this guest winemaker program where I'm not the only one making Vital anymore.
Okay.
And Balboa is going to be making that Gruner for Vital. It's bottled. They're not going to be making it. They made it. It's bottled, and we're releasing it, I believe, with the Wine Club this spring. So Tyler did a great job, and it's super fun.
Well, that helps you, takes a little load off of your plate, having somebody else make the wine.
Yeah, it's 6 of one, half dozen of the other. It's a little bit of cat herding, right? Because I'm cat herding. This year it was 12 winemakers.
Yeah.
And so that's more work, but it's less work physically, and then and it's so much more fun for the marketing and the brand and the awareness valley-wide, and the fact that everybody gets invited to be, everybody feels more invited and included. So definitely going in the right direction.
Okay. And the money for this goes to the SOS clinic?
Not exactly. It did in our first couple of years, just for simplicity's sake. Okay. Now, Vital's mission is to improve equity and access to health care for vineyard workers and their families.
Sure.
And so everything we do goes to that mission. So we have a couple of different programs that we do for that. Some of it gets donated to the SOS. Some of it gets, right now we have a vision program where we do free prescription eye exams and eyeglasses for vineyard workers and their kids, and like 5 other things that we're doing.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you grew up in a household with different, you said your grandmother couldn't speak English?
Yeah, so my surrogate grandmother, very long story, doesn't speak any English. She's...
What's her nationality?
She's Guatemalan.
Okay.
She's 98. And that woman is still trucking. I talked to her yesterday. But yeah, doesn't speak any English. So my brother and I grew up speaking Spanish and English.
Okay.
Mostly Spanish at that.
Well, that works really well in the
super helpful
wine business.
Super helpful.
And your parents?
Yeah, so Dad's, I grew up in Washington, D.C. Dad was a surgeon.
Okay.
Mom was kind of out of the picture, and that's the story.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. Well, that's a cool story. So you really appreciate the need to help people that struggle to get health care in this country.
Just in Washington State, but that's enough. That's enough. That's all I can handle.
Well, I don't.
Yeah.
I mean, just in general.
Totally.
Yeah, it's very difficult. So that's a really good story after this event.
Well, it's fun to have people like you out there, because if you look at the statistics nationwide, 25% of all wines purchased in the country are Cabernet. 25% are Chardonnay, and I believe it's 25% either like Pinot or, so I should know this statistic and I don't, but the point is 75% of all the wines purchased in the country are 3 wines. And yet you've got 10,000 varieties of wines out there.
Yeah, right.
Like, what a loss that we could be experiencing this whole rainbow and nobody's bothering, right?
No,
So
it's true. It's hard to get people to expand their palate. Good. How did it, when you were in Argentina, probably didn't have any problem being a woman in the winemaking world because of people like Susanna Balbo.
I mean, I've never
Well,
had a problem, but I think it's also.
But you said you went to a seminar and they were talking about.
There are problems out there. Yeah. I think I'm pretty oblivious is part of it.
Well, you're pretty confident too. That helps.
I think it's sort of a nice mixture.
Yeah, it looks
one third oblivious, 1/3 confident, and 1/3 I've been lucky to be surrounded by great people.
Yeah. No, those are all important.
Yeah.
I know that Helen Turley demands a lot of respect down in Napa. I don't know if she's still doing it or not. I met her brother. Sure. He came up to the island. He ended up taking over Turley Estates. She went off to do something else. So, yeah, cool. So I brought a couple of your wines.
Yeah.
Just to give them a whirl. Now you made an interesting comment. You said making rosé is deceivingly difficult.
It's super hard. It's technically the hardest wine I make.
That's interesting.
I know, because it's the cheapest price point once it hits the shelves. So
Sure.
It's just a sufferfest for the sake
Do
of
you
it.
want to taste a little bit?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Yeah, rosé is deceivingly hard to make. So the reason, there are many, is because I make one, most winemakers just make one rosé, right? They don't have 7 rosés that they make in the same way that they might reds. Like in my cellar, I've got a Cabernet, a Malbec, a Petit Verdot, and going at any point. I only have one rosé. So if I don't like it, I can't blend 5% of something into it partway through the year, right?
Yeah.
That's not an option. And then it has fewer ingredients than reds. It doesn't have tannins, it doesn't have oak, right? And so it's kind of the caprese salad of the wine world, right? You've got very few ingredients. It's not where you're hiding the old cucumber, right? It's just very naked.
Yeah.
And then it's got to be heat stable and cold stable. Heat unstable wines are fine for you, and they taste fine, but they go cloudy, and that sort of freaks everybody out.
Sure.
And then cold unstable wines throw those crystals. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah,
at the
I do.
bottom.
Yeah.
And in reds, no one cares. It's sort of,
It's expected sometimes.
unfined, unfiltered
Right.
luxury reds, right? No problem. But in whites or rosés, everybody freaks out.
Oh, yeah.
And then it goes to bottles sooner than anything else goes to bottles. So we don't have time for it to get angry at us. It's got to be a good wine from September to January without exception, and then get bottled.
Okay.
Whereas reds can, you've got 2 years to sort of massage those wines.
Massage, that's a better word.
Yeah. So
this is not $20 retail.
somewhere in there.
Yeah, around 2021. This is a 2023 Brook Bull Rosé, and you don't see this a lot. So you must use Saunier method.
No,
I
make this rosé for a rosé.
Okay, so you decide 40% Syrah, 36% Cinsault, 23% Mourvedre, and 2% Counoise. Now this is cool. Her labels are cool. You got to explain. So in the store, we don't put this in the front. We have to turn it so they know what it is. Sometimes they turn it this way. Sometimes I move them.
Yeah.
So people kind of get the idea of what's going on. So what's the concept behind the label? I mean, they're really cool. This is a horse, obviously.
Yeah. By the way, you should totally store them this side front in the store, because the whole point is we're creating art, right? We're creating art in the bottle. We're creating art on the label. This is to infuse something beautiful in your day, not to hide the art. And if somebody, wants to take a look, they can turn the bottle around and figure out
Well,
what it
most
is.
of them are
Yeah,
way.
yeah,
Every
yeah.
once in a while I turn it,
Yeah,
just so they can see what it is.
yeah.
Because, yeah,
Well, it was
a
important
lot
to
of
me.
customers are lazy.
Yeah. Well, it was important to me to not put font or text on the art because in the same way that I don't interrupt the art of the label, I don't interrupt the beauty of the wine. We don't do a lot of oak. We're pretty minimalist on the winemaking side. We just find something absolutely gorgeous in nature and then try to not, mess it up. So that's pretty indicative of the labels. But all the labels are of images of the West, the American West.
Okay.
They're all black and white photos. We work with photographers from, I was going to say throughout the country, but really throughout the world. And then all of the images have kind of a bit of a stark brutality to them. If you look long enough, there's some strife.
Yeah.
In those images, and it's in large part because I think when we talk about wine and when we enjoy wine and think about wine, the concept is it's this luxury, sort of soft, velvety, beautiful, fancy thing, right? But making it is pretty brutal, right? Like and I think
love
you
it. I love
appreciate
this.
it with that much more when you know, like, there was dust and dirt and sticking, like grape juice stickiness and bugs. Like we get stung by bees all the time, and then you're in the truck and it's 15 hours a day, and then you've got to physically haul stuff and load stuff and strap trucks down. And I mean, they're long. There are long days, and you are on the adrenaline rush of what the weather is giving you, and there
Sure.
are no exceptions. And so I think a nod to the strife that goes into that process was overdue.
Yeah, I think this one's really obvious. So these are kind of metaphorical almost.
Oh yeah.
That's really cool. Like I said, you're really clever, and that's proven in the label. So good. I love that. I love it. So let's just give this a little.
Yeah.
So this is the newest vintage, right? 2022?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to be
is our
pouring this
newest
tonight.
rosé. Yeah. And in the tasting room, we're pretty much out of this rosé. So we allocate to our distributors that sort of spread the wine around in January what they're going to get for the year. But we tend to sell out of stuff pretty quickly. So the two wines that you pulled for today were pretty much sold out of the rosé. That Cab Franc we sold out of in 9 hours. So
To your club?
to our club and our allocation list, we have
Okay,
a sort of
I
a
see.
texting program and an email list.
So American Northwest got their allocation.
Yeah, so they can dole some out to you, but we're out. We don't have any.
I get kind of an orange strawberry on those, which is interesting.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Kind of combined together.
I really like a lot of those melon, peach, orange blossom, granite, slate notes that you get that aren't just cherries and watermelon.
Yeah.
Right. I think with
watermelon on this one.
rosé, all too often you wind up in that sort of red fruit category,
Mm-hmm.
like adorable sort of strawberry pie, watermelon and cherries. And to me, I think rosé can be so much more fascinating than that. So I like to lean it in that direction with the fruit choices.
Yeah, I even get a little mango on it, which is interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
I love the freshness of this wine, the acidity, the brightness. It's almost juicy on the palate.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
And all those kind of pitted fruit things come through. Yeah, great rosé. I sold a bunch of this last year, so I'm excited to get this back in the store.
Good.
Unless we sell it all tonight.
I'm excited for rosé season 2. It's to me it's sort of like in the chronology of life. We bottle January, we release in February the rosé, and then the daffodils come up 3 weeks later. So it's almost like we're going.
Yeah, I bet that cycle just kind of sticks in your brain.
It does, yeah.
And what's really cool about you winemakers, and I don't know if you know Andrew Janik.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
I mean, just that excitement about the work. I mean, I like to work hard, and I get excited about working, but it's almost like a phonetic energy
Yeah.
that winemakers get into when that harvest season comes along.
Oh, yeah.
It's an intensity that you have to have if you ever want to get into the wine world.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I think it's indicative of at least in the Washington wine industry, I think so many of us like each other, in large part because we like what we do. You know, we it's a young enough industry that in our neck of the woods, it hasn't been taken over by corporate with a capital C. And so you really do have those original people that showed up because they were passionate about something that they wanted to go do.
Mm-hmm.
They are doing it. That creates a valley full of very happy people. It's not always roses,
Yeah.
right? But you have people who thought they were going to be really passionate about this thing they wanted to go do. They are. And so everybody kind of hangs out and it's like, oh my God, are you loving this? I'm loving this, right? And so you just, I mean, all of our friends are winemakers, right? So
Yeah.
we're all having a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's a very interesting world when you get involved on this YouTube channel. We did a blind Cab Franc tasting.
Oh yeah.
Yours wasn't in there, but Damsel came out
yeah,
on
Mary's
top.
great. Yeah.
So I'm going to arrange to have her do an event at some point. Do a little rinse here. But I've always been, I love Cab Franc. It's one of my favorite varietals. It's a huge player in Bordeaux.
Yeah, I think Cab Franc coming out of Washington is going to be the next big thing.
As long as they don't mask it with oak. I've tasted some Cab Franc from Washington State that had so much oak on it, tasted like a vanilla mocha milkshake.
Oh, sure. Well, you can over oak anything.
Of course.
Yeah.
But I don't think Cab Franc does well with oak.
Yeah, we do.
Sorry.
We do. I mean, I think this is 100% neutral oak on this Cab Franc. I do low to no oak on really all of our wines, and Cab Franc is no exception. The only exception is in the Deviant, which is one of our blends. It is a deviation from what we normally do because that's the one blend that does have some oak on it. So
Yeah.
for oak lovers, that's your one. That's your one Brook Bull choice.
Deviant.
Yeah, the Deviant.
Are we pouring that tonight?
No, that didn't get out. That sells out pretty quickly.
Okay.
It doesn't go into
Because
distribution.
of all the oak lovers.
Well, yeah, you know, everybody's out there.
So this rolls in about $31, which is a really reasonable price for a really good Cab Franc. This is a 2020 Brook Bull Cab Franc, Columbia Valley. There you go. Obvious, some intensity there.
Yeah, yeah,
There's an edginess to that label, back label.
yeah. And I didn't know you were pouring the 2020. It's the 2021 that sold out in 9 hours. So
We have
get
the
you some-
2021 coming to the
Coming,
table.
yeah.
No,
Yeah.
this is one I pulled off the shelf.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah. And this sold out pretty quickly too. I just don't remember in what amount of time.
I love the licorice on the nose. This
Oh
one has
yeah,
a lot
isn't
of
that
licorice,
pretty? That
yeah.
black licorice. Yeah.
And there's a little bit of a ham hock sort of thing going on.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean,
You do that?
I don't shy away from picking a little bit on the early side for Cab Franc. I really like having those methoxypyrazines, sort of those spicy, those bell pepper
Yeah,
notes. To me, that's what makes a Cab Franc and not
Absolutely.
and not a thin Cabernet. You know, I really embrace those geeky, spicy notes. I think when you look at the Washington wine, when you look at the nationwide U.S. wine industry, we had 27 consecutive years of wine consumption growth in the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
In recent years, it's sort of calmed down a little
Sure.
bit, but I think when you have that, you have really decades and generations of people who get tired of just the same sort of fruit bomb wine, and you have people ready to learn about more
Mhm.
interesting, thoughtful, creative wines.
Sure. I have, believe it or not, and we counted them because I think I like Cab Franc too much. 17 Cab Francs in my set. That's a lot.
That's a
But
lot.
they're all hand chosen. I mean, they're
Yeah.
not.
Well, and it's great. I mean, nobody would think twice if you said the same thing about Cabernet, right?
Oh
If
no,
you've got
there's way more
17
Cab.
Right. If you've got 17 cabs, nobody's got a problem with that.
But
So
this is the parent of Cab.
I know it's the dad.
And the other parent is Sauvignon Blanc.
A white
That's
wine.
Cabernet Sauvignon.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So the most classic red of all time,
Yeah.
half white.
Is Cabernet actually come up to Chardonnay's level? Because Chardonnay used to be the top selling wine in the U.S.
I think they're neck and neck. Those
They're
are the
neck and
two
neck, okay.
that are like 25%. I mean, it's off by 1% one way or the other, but they're pretty synonymous.
And 70% of the wine purchased in the U.S. is women.
Something like that.
I read that stat not too long ago, which would surprise me.
It's bonkers.
'Cause
Well, what's bonkers about it is that so in January of 2023, we at Brook Bull decided to no longer submit our wines for scoring unless it was to women wine critics. Because
Nice.
if the vast majority of wine buyers in the nation are women, they shouldn't be mansplained to. And there are no women wine critics who are scoring wines. I think part of that is women are less interested in points on a bottle. But yeah, I mean, I think if we've got, and this is the business side of it, which may be less interesting for others, but I think if you've got a demographic, speak to that demographic.
Yeah, absolutely. And you say there's no women critics that score wines?
I mean, as a Washington State winemaker, I can't find a single woman wine critic of substance, right, that's tied to like a magazine that you would know of.
Particular case, because I work in retail and I have to deal with the people that I recommend wines to or deal with, I've developed what I call a retail palate.
Yeah.
So I kind of divorce myself from my own palate because I have to sell wine to so many different people.
Well, I think your job and like Elaine Check-and-Brown's job or Karen McNeil's job are very different, right? Those people have to be their own beacon, right?
Mm-hmm.
Their
Sure.
own. It's only important what their own palate is, so that others can base it off of theirs if you know that it's similar.
Sure.
I think it's not, like, it's helpful for you to have wines in your store that you're very excited about, but, you're on an island, you've got 100 people coming tonight, they don't all have identical palates, it's just you're the wine shop, or you're the restaurant, or you're the whatever, so you've got to branch out and give people, if somebody's super into orange wine and you're not, you got to throw them a little bit of a bone, or if somebody's super into rosé and you're not, you got to throw them a little bit of,
right,
because there's, like, you're it for all of them, right? And and so I think it's a different job, even though it sounds kind of similar. It's not.
No, because you learn all these different palates, and you become sensitive to all these different palates. Like I have people that like old world wines only new world wines.
Right.
So when they walk into the store, I know what to look for with them. So when I'm tasting a wine and reviewing it on my YouTube channel, I try to put myself in that position of what that middle percentage, from 20 to 80, will they like this wine?
Right.
There's some wines I just absolutely do not like, but that doesn't make the grade any different. It's well made.
Yeah.
You have to, if it's a well made wine, it doesn't matter what I think of it, in terms of my personal palate. I just want to judge it based on how the wine is made.
Yeah, and I think if you talk to a lot of winemakers about wine drinking, you'll find that it's more in that realm. Like, yes, we love drinking a great wine that we love, but so my husband's also a winemaker, and I think he and I, there's no wine we won't try, right? We'll try everything, and we'll drink it almost less for the pleasure of drinking it, although that happens too, but I would say the majority of the time, it's kind of like how real estate agents go into people's homes. It doesn't matter whether they were invited to a dinner party, or whether they're showing a home, or whether they're dropping something off at a friend's house. Like, I'm sure a real estate agent never walks into a house not analyzing it.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
And that's kind of, and as a winemaker, you're drinking a wine, and you can't turn it off, thinking like, what were they going for? Did they get there? Should they have gone for it? That's a different question, right? Yeah. But I think that is how winemakers tend to drink most wines. And then every now and then, it's just an amazing wine, and they went for something they should have gone for, and they got there, and boy, do you love it, and is it from a region that you're just obsessed with, and then you drink the damn wine. But otherwise, I think it's more of an analysis process.
I love the kind of green tobacco kind of pyrazine thing on the backside of this one. It's not over the top, but it's nicely integrated. It's exactly what you would expect. It's kind of a cross between New World and Old World.
Yeah.
It's not Loire Valley, but it's not too far away from Loire Valley.
Well, it's low oak, but
Yeah.
it's a little more luscious on the mid palate, which is a different way of saying the same thing you just said. I would agree with you.
Yeah, it's good structure too. A little bit of grip on the backside, which is from the skin tannins, I would imagine. So, just to not go too much further, but how are you feeling about the 2023 vintage?
I'm excited. Yeah, 2023 on a personal level was an interesting vintage. It was the longest vintage ever. So we kept having sort of, we'd have like a heat spike, like we had a heat spike at the end of August. So I was able to pull in some of the Chardonnay, right?
Okay.
And then right after a heat spike, we would have a cold dip, or we would have 3 days of rain. But it wasn't a rainy season per se. We would just have these little like 2 days of this, 2 days of that, 2 days of something else. And then you'd start the cycle all over again. So right when you thought you would be able to like, you could or should pull everything in sort of adrenaline rush style, then you'd have 3 cold days. And then you had to undo those pick calls. And so it just, you would pick 2, you would pick 2, you would pick 2, you would pick, and the whole harvest just kept going. Which is great because, I mean, it's good and bad. It's good because you never run out of fermenter bins, you never run out of space on the floor in the fermentation room, you never run out of pickers in the vineyard, you never run out of trucks, you never run out of vendor, you just go, you just do. But boy, was that a long harvest.
Yeah.
Just kept going.
What good insight into, I wouldn't think about that as far as space in your facility and pickers and all that. That makes sense. Andrew mentioned that he had less fruit in 2023.
It was lower, yeah. Well, 22 was 35% above average. It was record-breaking, record-breakingly heavy vintage, which was great because it was also, I mean, this was my 31st harvest, and 22 was probably my favorite harvest among those 31 harvests.
I've been tasting some of the 22s are fantastic.
They're fantastic because they had an extra 3 weeks of
hang time. Oh.
So we had a cool to cold spring and summer and September. And so emotionally it was very stressful because going into it, if you get a first frost on October 10th, that means you bring in Chardonnay and then everything else frosts out, right? And it's just stressful. And instead what happened was the first week of October was 87 degrees, which I've never seen. The second week of October was 85. And then the third week of October was 82.
Wow.
So everything was not ripe, not ripe, not ripe. And then you had this unbelievable ripening season just a month later than it ever happens with no early frost. So we were able to get everything off of the vine. And it just got a month of extra hang time.
Cool.
Yeah.
Warm. I'm just kidding.
Warm at the very end. Yeah. Yeah.
Excellent Cab Franc. For you guys, that if you want to dive into Cab Franc, this would be a good place to start. Like I said, all the Cab Francs I have on the shelf, none of them have intrusive oak. Some of them are a little bit more vegetal than others. Jones of Washington, classic example, very Loire-like. But this one is like right in the middle and dialed in perfectly. You must really enjoy blending.
Yeah, it's my favorite part of the job. Yeah.
I would think so.
I love it.
Every winemaker I've met, except for one in California that I interviewed, which is funny, Rodney Strom, winemaker. He's retired now. He said he hated the blending part.
Oh, really? No,
He's the only winemaker I've ever heard say that.
Yeah.
Yeah, some people do it by committee. How many people do you get involved in the winemaking?
None. I think, no, it's just me. I think that one of, this might be sort of a vestige of being female, and I don't think I have many, but, I think in life you do tend to get mansplained to a little bit. Your opinion is not, it's a tricky bit, right? Your opinion is either not heard or you're sort of being loud and obnoxious. And I'm overgeneralizing. I don't go through my day
I
feeling
know
this
what
way,
you're saying.
right? But any nuance of that is like, I don't want any of that to be a part of my favorite part of my job.
It makes
and
sense.
so I do the blending alone, and that's it.
And you do a great job.
Well, thank you.
And it doesn't matter whether you're a man or a woman, you're a great winemaker. The gender doesn't matter.
Yeah, no, thank you.
Yeah, so, but it is nice to see. I know Rob Griffin's daughter is starting to get deeply involved in the winemaking side
that's
of the
awesome.
winery, which is really cool, and I think you'll see it more and more. I'm glad I got the chance to interview you.
Well, thanks for having me. It was a
thanks
pleasure.
for coming.
Yeah.
So there you go, Ashley Trout. You need to try her wines. They are fabulous, and probably a great representation of what Washington can do with many different varietals. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel. You keep watching, and I'll keep helping you spend your wine dollars wisely.